How are you?
How are you doing?
How are you doing?
I'm good.
Have you had a chance to wander the floor?
Yeah, well, I'm working.
Yeah.
I've been coming here 14 years, but I'm working it for 13 years. So, signing at the booth, signing a lot of copies of the Red Hood miniseries, Cherish Loss. A lot of under the hood trades are going.
Yeah, funny how that would go.
You gotta like
amazing how that would happen.
Oh, hey, it's nice when the shit works.
Yeah. So, what's it like being, on the film side of things as opposed to the comic side of things?
Well, it's cool. I mean, I think a lot of this came about. I think at this point I'm one of the only people who wrote this, from this end, who wrote the comic book, who wrote the source material, turned around and wrote the screenplay. A lot of it tries to do that. I wrote and created my own animated series, so it wasn't Babe in the Woods kind of stuff. I can write animation friendly material. But that said, it's a lot of fun. It's a different animal. In general, it's a little bit cleaner. You're writing action sequences, which are actually going to play out step by step rather than panel by panel. You don't have to write internal monologues. And people talk a lot less. Nobody talks more than people in comics. If you don't pick up any comic, you see someone jumping off a rooftop and there's a paragraph over their head. That gets down to a quip, which I wrote a lot of quips which didn't get in. As Alan Burnett would say, it's like, you got like 9 quips in this, we're on 2 pages here. No one can talk. Nightwing can't get it all out. It's funny. It's all good. We just got to cherry pick what's working. And later finding out there was Neil Patrick Harris, we should have left them all in.
Well, yeah.
Right, exactly.
But speaking then of cherry picking, what's it like, because you wrote the source, you wrote the graphic novel, isn't it kind of like, cutting apart your baby to make a Franken baby, I guess?
You would think. No, I didn't have a problem sort of cutting off all that fat. It is taking 2.5 years worth of comic and cutting it down to 75, 80 minutes when we're finally done. But I wrote it, the first thing I did is I did not reread the source material, I rewrote the outline.
Okay.
And that helped just break it down to just the good parts. Just, Batman, Jason Todd, the Joker, and Black Mask, and that's it. And a lot of the stuff's easy to lose because we're not doing any massive crossover events, which is what we were doing during this. There's no, there's no Infinite Crisis going on while we were doing this. So, Deathstroke doesn't make an appearance. You don't have Captain Nazi or the Hyena, which I know many of you are quite upset that Captain Nazi.
Yes, that was.
Yeah, major disappointment.
Yeah, well, no, the upside is that in the comic we killed him because he's Captain Nazi. And when I was asking, can I have Jason kill somebody? We go down the list how about Captain Nazi? Is anybody really going to miss him?
No, not so much.
No, actually, my editor said, I think I'll knock that one upstairs. I think we're okay. So yeah, in general, it was more fun just getting down to the nitty-gritty of the story. It's really the best parts. And I was thrilled how amenable they were just to keeping in all the melodrama. I mean, Batman and Red Hood do an awful lot of talking in this one.
They have a lot of issues to work through, so.
I know, and that's not usually not what you see like a superhero animated, feature. There's an awful lot of hand wringing involved in this one, which I was so pleased that they allow us to do.
When you were writing it, as you know, it's been the animated feature. You know there's going to be voice actors and things.
Yeah.
Did anybody pop in your head while you were?
No, I mean, it's really interesting. I hear voices all the time.
Don't we all?
Yeah. But in this case, it was a good example is Batman. We always know what Batman sounds like. He just sounds like that. And when Bruce Greenwood did the voice and I heard for the first time, oh my God, that's it. Which is what you want with Batman. It's not really sort of like something like, oh, it's a great interpretation.
No.
You just you don't want to think about it. And that's what it was like. Suddenly like, oh wow, that's exactly what it should sound like. On the flip side, you have someone like, Jason Todd, who I've written probably more than anybody. I really had no idea what he sounded like in my head. And then Eccles did it, and boom, it's like, oh crap, that's what he sounds like. That's perfect, that's just right. going back again, Neil Patrick Harris. That's exactly the way Ring sounds in my head. And then John DiMaggio, who had the hardest job, which is doing Joker. There's been a handful of people who've done Joker.
Yeah, it's going to be tough, filling in.
Those are very big round shoes to fill.
Yes, they are.
And the Joker is one where there are interpretations of the Joker.
Yeah. And there were some that work better than others. So
there's Cesar Romero. That's one way to go. And we know that Nicholson, Heath Ledger, Mark Hamill. So you got to really make it your own. And when John did it, I was really surprised because he didn't make it his own. He's very gruff and very masculine and very tough, which some kind of go loopy, it's like feminine or like psychotic, and the range goes up and down. John is just flat out scary. Couldn't you put him next to Heath Ledger and like they're different men. These are two different Jokers, or Nicholson, or what have you. So it was a very different voice than the one I heard in my head.
What's really interesting about the whole relationship between Batman and Red Hood, in a way, Red Hood is Batman, but just turned up several notches in certain places to go much further than Batman ever would. And there's that wonderful scene that I saw the clip of where they're talking, and Batman's trying to reach out to him. And I thought that was really interesting.
Thanks. Well, again, right there, like the melodrama they let us, put in. And what I loved about that scene, you can hear Bruce Greenwood just lighten his voice just to touch. And like you really, it's something very subtle, but so obvious. It's like a baseball bat to your head. Jason actually, that's the undercurrent of the father and son relationship, and that Batman knows is totally unspoken. That Jason Todd is everything that the Red Hood is everything he could possibly become if he ever had allowed him. That's why he doesn't kill Joker. The snake keeps eating himself.
Right. As a counterpoint to that scene, then there's the final scene. Which I'll confess, it's been a long time since I looked at the comic. How different is that scene from anything in the comics?
It's almost identical.
Is it?
Yeah, it's almost identical with one issue that we had a standards of practice issue.
Gee, I wonder why.
It was just a small thing that we had to change. It really doesn't change. I mean, I actually, a couple of friends of mine had already seen it. Were fanboys who know it quite well. When I pointed it out to them, like, oh no, God, I didn't even notice that. Like, good, okay, then it slid right by. But no, thankfully, when I first pitched this story arc, years and years ago, I pitched it with the ending. I mean, I sort of like told it, I was like, and it ends here with, forget what goes on in the middle for 2 years. But here, there they are, and Jesse's got the gun in Joker's head, and his big question is not like, you let me die, but like, why is he still alive? And it was Dan DiDio, who was, been my boss and friend for a while. But that's great. Yeah, we're gonna do this. And it still works. So thankfully, everyone who worked on it here, agreed with that. So it's like it's a good ending. It makes sense,
And hearing Jensen do it.
Yeah.
Sorry. We were talking earlier about how it was the first time we really kind of felt empathy for that character. Yeah.
He does it just right. His voice crack was a little bit. It's not like sobbing or anything.
Right.
You can hear he's suddenly weak, and it's a boy reaching out to his father.
Obviously, with the ability to go back and relook at what you've done previously. Did you find anything that you really wanted to nail down, that you really wanted to hammer through, that you didn't get to originally?
Well, I'd say in the transition of doing it, you get to do it in a brand new, shinier way. There isn't anything I would have fixed per se, but the action is just pumped up that much more. And that's always fun for us geeks to see these things played out in that way. This is rather violent for an animated cartoon. It's not, there's been like a little bit of talk on the web, like it's so violent, like it's not Kill Bill.
I just saw it on a 3D. Give me a break.
There's a little more kicking around. Yes. Somebody gets set on fire, someone's head gets blown off the panel, but a lot of blood. So yes, but to answer your question, I think it was more about getting to sort of streamline these scenes. Whereas we can't help it. We always want to give everyone their money's worth with comics. So when you're doing a fight scene, It is never just about letting the art speak. Sometimes it is, but a lot of times you're telling a story on two levels. It's about, the written word along with the visual. So you're often doing that internal monologue. You're also like writing a different narrative that goes over it. And doing it here, it's really refreshing to just let the action speak for itself. And when they're talking, they're talking. It just has an element of realism.
Did you approach writing for animation in a different way to writing for comics? Or is every job different?
Yeah.
I know it was your own work, you were kind of adapting, but I mean, did you approach it in a different way?
Yeah, you basically have to wear a different hat and you have to think more visually. You have to really know when to just, shut up and play. Because it is much more a visual medium. And comics are to be read. And that's something that when we talk to young writers, that's what we have to sort of stride home to them. Like, it's words and pictures, but it's words and pictures, and words are really important to carry it. With film, it's a visual medium. You got to shut up, and it's a lot of times the spoken word is supposed to carry the images you see in your head, and a lot of times things that you say are not really going to register, unless you're driven home with a certain habit. So it's different than that. But and also I'm writing an animation-friendly script. I'm writing it because I know board artists can be working off of it.
Yeah.
So when doing an action sequence, I've seen some really chintzy action sequences on page, and I'll stop banging. Sorry. With this, I make sure to try to give the beats. I mean, it's boring how the sausage is made, sort of stuff.
Yes.
But the board artists like to know where these certain big beats have to come, and then they have the fun of filling it in. Like, I did not write every single punch, but I wrote when certain punches are going to land and how.
One more question for Mr. Winnick, and then I got to move along.
Okay.
Just one thing. As far as when you were writing, did you have? Did you know how far you could go as far as the violence? Is there like a stop?
At one point I asked. It was like, I'm writing. I was like, let me shoot Alan and Bruce to know, hey, can I light a guy on fire? Because I did that in the comic, and it was in the outline of the Lit on Fire. Are we okay with this? Like, yep. Like that thing, we will pull you back. I think what finally got pulled back in the final draft was I had a lot of blood literally kind of on the page, like discussing that, you watch this opening sequence and Jason's getting beaten with a crowbar. He's bleeding a lot less than one should after getting beaten with a crowbar. And that's just, it is a standards issue, like we just can only show so much blood. So when he's dragging himself across the floor, and you don't see a smear of blood, which I have in the original script.
Right. Power animation, though.
Yeah, but he spits blood in Joker's face. That's fine.
So, we have a lot of kind of pseudo and whatnot.
Yeah.
And they've kind of flipped him back and forth in comics where he's, running around on Troy doing stuff.
Uh-huh.
Do you prefer him as sort of a more pseudo villain, more sort of the you know what I'm saying? Like,
he's an anti-hero,
yeah,
but heavy on the anti. He's a bad guy. I mean, that's where we're kind of coming out now. There's been some, peaks and valleys at the moment where they've been taking him. Right now, where we sit, especially all the goings on and everyone happy with it, he's a bad guy. Yeah, he might do a few good things in very bad ways, and he might do some very bad things in very bad ways as well. So that's who he is. The whole thing going on with Batman right now is just it's an amazing dysfunctional family. Batman is the father, who's dead, but coming back. And Dick is the good son who hates Jason, and he's got two little wrongs. It's him over here, and you got Damien over here, and they hate each other's guns too. Nobody gets along, so we like that.